This is TWiT. The 13th generation of Intel chips is here.
Actually, so you know that 12th gen piece of junk you just bought, Leo? It's not a dick. So
I would really love to see some confirmation of what Intel's claiming. Did you see that they said the i9 at 24, 25 watts is as fast as my 12th gen at 241 watts? Boy, if they're really getting that kind of savings, that's pretty
I just want everyone to remember that for the past several months now, I've been saying I review a lot of laptops, and I've seen a lot of weird stuff with these 12th gen chipsets. A lot of performance issues.
Oh, really?
So, I know that I am not a hardware guy, and people keep coming to me and say, "No, Paul, it's blah, 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 whatever." But here's the thing. Here's what I know just from real world experience, and then I have these suppositions that I make based on this. Intel used to have U-series processors that were 15 watts that did everything. They were in every computer that I reviewed, basically, with rare exception. And then for high performance with dedicated graphics, you could get like an H-series processor. With the 12th gen, they put a P-series in between, but you got to remember, 12th gen, they've switched this hybrid architecture. They have performance and efficiency cores now, so it's a completely different architecture. I think that for Intel, with this new architecture, to get the performance they were getting with U-series, they had to go to a higher wattage part with more, more cores is part of it. And that was the only way to do it. And that impacts battery life. And I think these P-series processors, which are now incredibly mainstream, what U-series used to be, thing that's in most computers, are getting the same performance and worse battery life because it's the first time they've done this it's the first time they've done it in a mainstream sense. I know they've had a couple of gens of earlier things, but there is no doubt in my mind that as we move forward, 13, 14, whatever gen, this is going to improve. And when you look at these 13 gen chips, which if you follow the schedule, this is desktop, right? So mobile will be next year, but they do desktop now in the end of the year for the holiday season. The U and now P series stuff will be announced in January, CES, right? So the machine Leo was probably announced in January, probably shipped in March. I think you bought it. Well, I don't know when you bought it, but you probably got it in June, right? Yeah. No, this happens every year. It's not new.
It's a cycle of life, guys. It's a cycle of life.
No, but what is new is this is the second gen of its hybrid architecture.
Right.
And I think it's going to change dramatically. And I think it's going to change again dramatically because once this thing is out in the world, first of all, Windows, I think, has to be adapted to run efficiently on these things. I think that's some of the issues I'm seeing. Yeah. Windows apps, et cetera. The world we live in was not constructed for this kind of weird multi-core architecture. It's just different. And so I think what you're going to see is an explosion of cores, right, which is kind of strange. But these the lowest end version, right, which is is it an i3 or an i5? I think it's an i3, has 14 cores. That's the lowest one.
Right.
There are 16 and 24 core versions. You got to understand, 2 years ago, well, desktop, we had multiple cores, but 2 years ago, mainstream computers had 4 cores, period. Mm-hmm. And then, H series, you could get it, it was probably 8, maybe even 12, maybe something like that. On Intel. I'm not talking AMD, but on Intel. This is a very big change.
Yeah.
Intel's also doing ARC graphics, right? In addition to integrated graphics. That doesn't impact what I'm talking about today, but that's another one of those things that's going to evolve a lot over time. And I think those two things evolving side by side, it's going to be quite different. When Microsoft came out with Windows Server Data Center Edition, one of the things they showed us as reviewers was this crazy data center system that it was probably 24 cores or 32 cores. And we were like, oh, because everyone had 1 or maybe 2 cores back then. There was no way we were going to do that on our computers. And you flash forward, I don't know, what's 10 years maybe, whatever it's been, maybe 15 in this case, but 32 cores in an Intel processor for a desktop.
So when Apple came out with its M1, I think a lot of people said, oh, Intel will never catch up. I think you were one of the people who said, give him a moment.
They'll need a moment.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, and one of the reasons I think people thought that Apple's processors were so power efficient, it was not merely the efficiency cores, which Intel has immediately duplicated, but the process, that they were down to a 5 nanometer process. They're looking at 3 nanometer. And Intel's still stuck at a pretty I don't know, 10.
Well, what do you think? What are these desktop parts at? These have to be 11 at least.
Yeah.
Right?
But maybe that's not critical to the whole thing. Do you think this is clearly Intel, somewhat of an Intel response to Apple Silicon?
Look, first of all, I'm not going to dump on what Apple did. That was an incredible transition. And that's even true if you understand they had the playbook already written when they did the PowerPC to Intel transition.
Right.
But here's what I think anyone would agree with who knows more about this than I do. What you're seeing gen over gen with the Apple Silicon is much smaller gains now, right? Because they've already taken the big step of moving the architecture. Now, when you go gen over gen, it's like, well, okay, they don't even really talk about it anymore. They're like, oh, this is the fastest performing, M series chip ever, and then someone finally does benchmarks, and they're like, yeah, it is. It's like 3% faster.
Right.
It's not dramatic anymore.
Yeah.
So Intel has a lot of ground to make up, but they also have a lot of headroom. Where Apple now is settled into what they're doing. So we'll see what happens. But these the standard advantages of the PC market remain, which is diversity and choice. And then in this case, the ability to pair this with the graphics card of your choice.
Right.
And if you're, depending on what you're doing, if it's engineering or science or gaming or whatever, you have this range of choices. So Apple, I would say, it's incredible what they've done. But on the graphics end in particular, there's work to be done there for sure. And will they ever turn to dedicated graphics, or will they be able to enhance the thing they do internally?
Doesn't look like they intend to. I mean, I agree that's unknown, but it feels like they just say, well, no, we're going to make ours better and better and better. Intel also announced their Arc GPU.
Right. Right.
All of this is just emerging now, so I'm very curious to see how that.
So
performs.
There's some Arc stuff. There's mobile Arc has been around this year. I've never gotten one. So some computers have a choice. You can get Iris Xe or Arc. I don't remember the model, 340M or something.
Now they have now they have cards as well.
Yeah, right. So obviously what Intel, in this case, Intel's not. So hybrid architecture, they're going after ARM. Arc, they're going after AMD because they have Radeon. Right. So AMD is a serious challenger in the CPU space, but they also have, surprise, we also make one of the two major graphics architectures. So, in sort of buying NVIDIA, I guess, Intel has decided to go it on the ring.
Yeah. It's good. Look, competition is the best possible situation. You don't want anybody to dominate. So this is great. The new Arc A770, which comes out next month, is priced the same as an RTX 3060. And supposedly will operate even faster. So that's really.
It depends on what you're doing. If I were like a gamer, for example, I don't think I'd be looking at Intel anything for a couple of years, right? I mean, games today are optimized for NVIDIA and for Radeon.
Right.
Science and engineering, high-end workstation computing, maybe that's a different story. There's different certifications you get there, and I'm sure Intel will be part of that. We'll see.
It's very interesting.